Repent. Never!
Hello, it's Stuart here, the unrepentant atheist. Thanks for tuning in. And today I'm going to be talking about near-death experience. So we know that this is, for those skeptics who are out there who are watching this, I'm pretty sure that you've looked into this already, near-death experiences, and it's a subject which keeps coming up, particularly with theists or Christians who cite near-death experience as one of the contributing pieces of evidence towards their religion. So what I've done is I watched about 2 months ago a video on YouTube entitled "Is There Life After Death?" moderated by John Cleese 2018 at the Tom Tom Festival. So John Cleese, you've probably heard of him. He's a British comedian, famous for various roles, famous for Fawlty Towers and Monty Python's the main one. Very funny guy. In those times, he became kind of less funny as the decades rolled on, and now he's just a complete bore. That's just my personal opinion. So he's I'm not too sure how he got into this thing about near-death experience, but he's moderating this discussion, and I'm going to put a link to it. And I'm not going to. I've watched it. I watched the whole thing through about a year ago, I think, and I did make a mental note of it. What came out of it for me was that all of these people who are in medicine believe that near-death experience points to an afterlife, which disappointed me a little bit. I was hoping it would be more balanced, but they're all. Let's have a look. Director of Division of Perceptual Studies, Professor of Psychiatry and Neurobehavioral Sciences, that's one of them. Professor of Research, Division of Perceptual Studies, that's another one. Department of Psychiatry. Another one is Assistant Professor of Research, Division of Perceptual Studies. It seems to be mainly a psychiatric department that these are from, Department of Perceptual Studies. So they're all MDs or PhDs anyway. But as we know, even people right up at the top at science can be wrong, and confirmation bias can lead them to fallacious conclusions, erroneous conclusions. And in this case, I was quite staggered by some of the statements that these esteemed medical professionals were making. I heard statements such as, for example, more and more the evidence from near-death experience research is pointing to something real, is pointing to an afterlife. It's incontrovertible. The evidence is just so clear. And they're making statements like this which have got no real proper basis in fact, because, okay, I've looked at the main studies and I'm going to go through them in a moment, but I was just really disappointed in this particular debate or conversation. It really was, because quite clearly they're all tainted by confirmation bias. They all believe in life after death, and that near-death experiences point to an afterlife. Okay, look, John Cleese is getting on a bit. I think he's over 80 years old, and obviously nobody wants to die. People, on the whole, probably want to live forever, or if not live forever, they want to live for as long as possible. And if there's life after death, of course, I'll take it, and I'll take it gladly. I'm not too sure what I'll do in the afterlife, if there is one, and whether I'll get bored living for eternity, I don't know. But based on all the research I've done, I don't believe that near-death experiences, so-called near-death experiences, actually point to an afterlife. And once we get down to looking at the actual research, you'll see that there's hardly anything there at all. So just moving on. Before I do that, I just looked at one of the comments on this page. I've got it in front of me. I'll post the link. Okay. Somebody's posting, my teenage son has terminal cancer. I need to hear this stuff. Edit, my son died yesterday, August 26th. He went peacefully in his sleep. Since his type of cancer spread and made organ donation impossible, we have approved the hospital to take the affected organs for testing and research. Now, my heart really went out to this parent, because, you know, I mean, even if you don't have a child, I've got a child myself, and I feel dreadful when I hear about this kind of thing, and it's the one thing. Obviously, no parent wants to outlive their child, and but I feel that it's more important, rather than having a false belief that you're one day going to be reunited with your loved ones who've died, that we've got to face the bitter truth in life and accept that we've only got one life and make the most of it when it's around. And obviously, in the case of this parent, I suppose the memories of the child won't be much consolation, but as it doesn't look to me like there's anything after death, it's just one of the horrible things about life, that when somebody dies, you're never going to see them again. It's really unpalatable. I don't like it, but damn it, I wish there was life after death, to be honest with you. But it doesn't look like there is, and I take no pleasure in debunking near-death experience and life after death. Believe me, I want to live. I want to live beyond my own death, but I just don't see any proper evidence that there is one, life after death. So just going on now, you'll forgive me for looking at the Wikipedia summary of near-death experience. So what is the definition of near-death experience? As given by Wikipedia, near-death experience is a profound personal experience associated with death or impending death, which researchers claim share similar characteristics. When positive, such experiences may encompass a wide variety of sensations, including detachment from body, feelings of levitation, total serenity, security, warmth, the experience of absolute dissolution, and the presence of a light. When negative, such experiences may include sensations of anguish and distress. Okay, so near-death studies. So I'm going to go through those in a moment. Just to make clear, though, because believe it or not, but I've got a friend who is a conspiracy theorist. My best friend, actually. I've been friends with him since the late 80s. Somewhere around about, when was it? In the mid-90s, he became interested in David Icke. My fault, because I lent him a book by David Icke that somebody had lent to me. I'd kind of skimmed through it, and I passed it on to him. If I'd realised what it was going to start, believe me, I would have consigned that book to the rubbish bin, or simply returned it to the owner. So he always was predisposed to a belief about the Freemasons and that type of thing. So I wish I could have foreseen it all, but he is wholesale conspiracy theorist. He believes in virtually every conspiracy theory there is, and he's a flat earther. And it's become impossible, more or less, for us to continue with proper friendship. And just recently, he told me that he was not going to be revealing to me any more of this special information, because he said that I'm just one of these people who dismisses everything. And I said to him, well, that's not true. I said to him, I don't dismiss everything. I don't dismiss propositions which have got good evidential support. I said, unfortunately, the propositions that you're presenting me with do not have good evidential support, and you're not able to demonstrate the truth of any of them. That's why I dismiss them. So, yeah, so I'm not a sort of unhealthy skeptic that just dismisses everything. If there's good evidence, then of course I can be persuaded. And I don't simply dismiss near-death experience. I'll read the studies out in a moment, but if good, robust studies appear and they can be replicated, this is a difficult thing. How do you replicate the research? How do you repeat the research which is being done? Because there are claims, and the people who are doing these studies a lot of the time and compiling them already believe in the afterlife, and that near-death experience is a real kind of phenomenon. So it's a difficult one, really. I don't know. I don't know how the results can be verified, and that's going to make it difficult. But nevertheless, so the studies, the main studies, there have been lots of smaller studies, but the main ones. There's Parnia's study, 2001. They looked at Southampton General Hospital in the UK. It was a year-long study, cardiac arrest survivors. 63 survivors were interviewed. They'd been resuscitated after being clinically dead with no pulse, no respiration, and with fixed dilated pupils. They investigated out-of-body experience claims by placing figures in areas where patients were likely to be resuscitated on suspended boards facing the ceiling, not visible from the floor. So obviously members of staff couldn't see it, and the patients wouldn't be able to see it anyway, unless they actually floated out of their bodies and went up there. So four had experience that, according to the study criteria, were near-death experiences, but none of them experienced. I mean, I'm assuming that they're simply describing some of the criteria that I've already read out in the definition of what an NDE is: feeling of lightness and maybe seeing a light and that kind of thing, feeling of warmth. That's an NDE. But the big thing is floating out of your body and seeing things which nobody else will be able to see. That's the big thing, and that would really prove it. Well, not prove it, but it would be very good evidence. So only 4 out of 63 had any kind of experiences. None of them experienced out-of-body experience. Thus, they were not able to identify the figures. Okay, so moving on. Van Lommel's study, 2001, cardiologist, 344 cardiac arrest patients who'd been successfully resuscitated in 10 Dutch hospitals. Patients not reporting NDEs were used as controls. Okay. The work also included a longitudinal study where 2 groups were compared at 2 and 8 years for life changes. Okay, so 1 patient had a conventional out-of-body experience. It's not that he had a conventional out-of-body experience. It's that he reported that he had an out-of-body experience. Okay, what's the evidence? He reported being able to watch and recall events during the time of his cardiac arrest. His claims were confirmed by hospital personnel. Okay, how do we verify that? Because I've seen studies before where hospital, like a nurse, would verify, oh yeah, and then later on when you try to track that nurse down, you find either she never worked at the hospital, they couldn't trace anybody of that name, and it couldn't be verified. Anyway, so we've just got 1 case out of 344 who'd been resuscitated. Only 1. I would have kind of thought that if cardiac arrest patients are being resuscitated and they're virtually clinically dead, that more than just 1 out of 344 would report something. 1 out of 344 seems to me very poor. If people really have got souls and the soul is able to perceive things when the body is dead before it floats off into heaven, I would have thought that more than 1 out of 344 would report it. That study to me looks like it's completely worthless. It's useful insofar as it, to me, demonstrate that there's nothing really going on with these cases, or there's unlikely to be anything going on. So there's a bigger study called the AWARE study. Now, I remember in somewhere around 2007, 2008, 2009, or 2010, somebody called into the Atheist Experience about near-death experience, and he was pretty much convinced by it. He said there was a massive amount of evidence out there, which there isn't, and there never was. But what he's thinking about is all the anecdotal evidence, and he's putting it all together and drawing his conclusions. And it's not proper evidence. As they say, the plural of anecdote is not data. This study, which concluded in 2012, included 33 investigators, that's a lot, across 15 medical centres in the UK, Austria and the US, and tested consciousness, memories and awareness during cardiac arrest. The accuracy of claims of visual and auditory awareness was examined using specific tests. One test consisted of installing shelves bearing a variety of images and facing the ceiling, hence not visible by hospital staff. in rooms where cardiac arrest patients were more likely to occur. The results of the study were published in 2014, and they were discussed in the media. So what were the results? There were 2,060 cardiac arrest events. 101 of 140 cardiac arrest survivors could complete the questionnaires. I'm not sure what that means. Does that mean that there were just 140 survivors out of 2060? Or does it mean that there were potentially more survivors, but no, sorry, I beg your pardon. No, it does mean that there were only 140 out of 2060 who survived. That seems quite low. Well, okay, well, anyway. So only 101 completed the questionnaires. Of these 101, 9% could be classified as near-death experiences. 2% of those completing the questionnaires described seeing and hearing actual events related to the period of cardiac arrest. These 2 patients' cardiac arrest did not occur in areas equipped with ceiling shelves, hence no images could be used to objectively test for visual awareness claims. Well, what a pity, eh? What a pity. One of the 2 patients was too sick and the accuracy of a recount could not be verified. For the second patient, however, it was possible to verify the accuracy of the experience and to show that awareness occurred paradoxically some minutes after their heart stopped at a time when, and in quotes, the brain ordinarily stops functioning and cortical activity becomes isoelectric. Now, note that I emphasize with my voice the word ordinarily. The brain ordinarily stops functioning and cortical activity becomes isoelectric. So what does that word ordinarily mean? Does it mean not 100% of the time, possibly? Or that theoretically this is what should happen, but we don't know for certain? It kind of leaves some space for some doubt there. Okay, the experience was not compatible with an illusion, imaginary event or hallucination, since visual and auditory awareness could be corroborated. So they're saying that when she went through this experience, she heard something and she saw some things which were corroborated. Again, how do we verify that? I mean, we're talking about 1 out of 140 who survived reporting that she saw and heard something when supposedly she was more or less dead. But just 1. And how do we verify that? Could there be another explanation? Well, researchers think yes, there have been various hypotheses put forward for when this does happen. That maybe there are some hypotheses that the brain can, certain aspects of the brain can go on functioning. Maybe it's picking up something. Maybe her eyes were open during the at that particular time. Maybe some visual data got in. Who knows? But again, the fact that they've only got 1, and unfortunately, what would really impress me is if she floated up there and said, "Oh, there's a number." Should we say that there's a number 666 facing the ceiling? I saw it. I floated up there and I saw it. And wow, I mean, that would be really something. But no, we've got nothing like that so far. So the number on a visual display, or the picture on a visual display, so far has not produced any results. And it's the one sort of piece of data that would be really impressive. But so far, out of all those trials, there are only 2 who they were saying they gave information that could be corroborated. Well, again, how do we check that? But only 2 out of hundreds and hundreds. It's hardly anything. The Aware 2 project, they're continuing with this research, which was supposed to have concluded in 2020. I've not found anything about that. So anyway, going back to the Atheist experience, that caller who called in said, "Oh, I've already got some provisional results and it's looking really, really good that there are, it's pointing to life after death and everything." Complete nonsense. No, it's not pointing to life after death. And it's not even showing that NDEs are anything, any real kind of phenomena that cannot be explained potentially naturalistically. And there are so few cases where people are saying that they can hear things, subjects being discussed when they're supposedly dead. There are only 2 cases in 10, 15 years of research. And the vast majority, nearly all people, report absolutely nothing at all. And if this was any kind of real phenomena that was going on, I would expect more. I would expect there to be more cases, not just a smattering here and there of people saying that they had a warm and fuzzy feeling, and they had a feeling of peace. They saw light. I mean, sorry, it's not impressive, and it just backs up my view that the conference, the discussion with John Cleese moderating, where all of them were saying, "Oh yes, there's lots of evidence, and it really is pointing to life after death." No, it's not. If you already want to believe this, if you already believe it, you've got confirmation bias. I can see how it might be persuasive, but if you're coming at it from my point of view, somebody who wants to go on living after I die, so it would be in my interest for it to be true, I should have confirmation bias, shouldn't I? Because after all, I don't want to die. I want to go on living after my death. I want to see the people that I've loved. I want to see my friends that have died when I get to the afterlife. So yeah, I've got confirmation bias. But I can see that this is complete nonsense, that there's no proper, that there are no verifiable data here that points to the NDE as a real phenomena, a real, like out-of-body experience that is really happening, that is anything other than naturalistically explained. And the whole idea that there's a soul inside the body is not supported by any of this NDE research. It's just not. Okay, guys, have you heard of any data? Have you heard of any other studies that might convince me that NDEs point to life after death? Maybe the Wikipedia page is not really summarizing all of them. Maybe I've missed something. If you know of anything, let me know. Post it below. And by the way, guys, Christians mainly, don't point me to books on this topic. If you've got evidence, summarize it and point me to the studies. I don't want to be pointed to half a dozen books on NDEs and countless anecdotes, etc. And then don't accuse me of not studying the evidence. You can see that I'm doing the research. And if there are studies out there that I'm not aware of, by all means, bring them to my attention. Put links, post links, let me know. I'd even give you my email address so you can post me links to the research so I can read it. But I don't want to read books by researchers who believe in NDEs and are trying to prove life after death. And they're just going through a ton of anecdotes. I haven't got time to do that. I've got thousands of books recommended to me. I've got to be selective on my reading, obviously. So that's all for now. Let me know what you think. And I'm just going to upload this now and look forward to your response. Bye for now. Thank you for watching this production. I do this purely out of enthusiasm for the subject and will never ask for any contributions via Patreon or any other method. But if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, subscribing won't cost you a penny and will keep you up to date on my latest talks. Thank you.